What happens when a beloved television actor sits down for what should be a friendly morning chat, only to face a barrage of dismissive comments and condescending questions from a host who seems more interested in stirring up controversy than having a genuine conversation? It only took one cutting remark about his most iconic role for the entire interview to spiral into one of the most shocking on-air meltdowns in daytime television history. This is the story of how Neil Dudgeon, the gentleman actor known for his calm demeanor and professionalism, found himself in a heated confrontation that would leave viewers stunned and the studio audience completely silent. The morning started like any other on the show. The lights were bright, the studio audience was settled in their seats, and the panel was ready. Lorraine Kelly sat in her usual spot, flanked by her regular panelists, entertainment correspondent Sarah Hughes and lifestyle expert Marcus Fleming. They were there to discuss the latest television news and conduct interviews with special guests. Neil Dudgeon arrived at the studio that morning with nothing but good intentions. He was there to promote the new season of Midsummer Murders, the long-running detective series that had become a staple of British television. Neil had taken over the lead role years ago, and fans had grown to love his portrayal of DCI John Barnaby. He was proud of the work, proud of the show, and ready to share some behind-the-scenes stories with the audience. But from the moment he walked onto the set, something felt different. Lorraine greeted him with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Well, well." Well," she said as Neil sat down across from her. "Look who's here. The man who stepped into someone else's shoes and has been trying to fill them ever since." The audience laughed nervously. Neil smiled politely, trying to brush off what seemed like an odd introduction. "Good morning, Lorraine. Thanks for having me." "Let's just get right into it, shall we?" Lorraine said, not waiting for the pleasantries to settle. "Midsummer Murders, another season. How many does this make now? 20? 25? Don't you think it's time to let this old dog rest?" Neil's smile faltered slightly. "Well, the viewers seem to still enjoy it. We have a very loyal fan base, and the stories continue to be engaging and—" "Oh, come on," Lorraine interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "You can't seriously tell me you think people are tuning in for groundbreaking television. It's the same formula every single episode. Someone dies in a quaint village. You show up, ask some questions, and solve it by the end. Hardly revolutionary, is it?" Sarah Hughes, sitting to Lorraine's left, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She glanced at Marcus, who was looking down at his notes, clearly sensing the tension building. Neil maintained his composure. "I think there's comfort in familiarity. Our viewers appreciate the consistency, the quality of the writing, and the beautiful countryside settings. Not every show needs to reinvent television to be worthwhile." "Comfort and familiarity," Lorraine repeated with a mocking tone. "Is that what we're calling it now? I'd call it lazy programming, personally. But then again, I suppose when you're not the original star, you can't really complain about the material you're given, can you?" The studio audience fell silent. Even the camera operators exchanged glances. This was not the usual tone of a morning chat show interview. Neil's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm very proud of the work we do on Midsummer Murders. The cast and crew are incredibly talented, and we put a lot of effort into every episode." "Effort," Lorraine said, leaning back in her chair with her arms crossed. "Right. Tell me, Neil, do you ever feel like you're just going through the motions at this point? I mean, how many times can you stand over a fake dead body and pretend to look concerned before it all just becomes, I don't know, a bit silly?" Marcus Fleming finally spoke up, trying to redirect the conversation. "I think what Lorraine is trying to say is—" "I know exactly what I'm trying to say, Marcus," Lorraine snapped, cutting him off without even looking in his direction. "I'm asking Neil if he ever gets bored playing the same character doing the same thing year after year after year." Neil took a deep breath. "Every role has its challenges, Lorraine, and every season brings new stories, new characters, and new dynamics. I find it fulfilling, and clearly, millions of viewers do as well." "Millions of viewers," Lorraine said with a laugh. "Yes, Millions of viewers who probably have it on in the background while they're doing the washing up or nodding off after Sunday dinner. That must be so rewarding for you. Sarah Hughes tried to intervene. Lorraine, I think we should... Should what? Sarah? Lorraine turned to her sharply. Should pretend that we're all fascinated by yet another season of the same show? Should act like this is groundbreaking work? I'm just being honest here. Someone has to be. Neil's expression had shifted from polite tolerance to visible frustration. Honesty is one thing, Lorraine. Rudeness is another. I came here to have a conversation about the show, not to be insulted. Insulted? Lorraine's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. Oh, don't be so sensitive. I'm just pointing out the obvious. You took over a role from someone who was beloved, and you've been coasting on that show's reputation ever since. It's not exactly a secret. The tension in the studio was now palpable. Members of the crew had stopped what they were doing to watch. The audience sat frozen, unsure of how to react. That's incredibly disrespectful, Neil said, his voice firm but controlled. Not just to me, but to everyone who works on that show. We put our hearts into it. Your hearts, Lorraine said dismissively. How touching. Tell me, do you ever wonder if you're just there because they needed someone, anyone, to replace the original lead? Do you think about the fact that you're essentially a substitute? Marcus tried again. Lorraine, this is getting a bit what? Lorraine turned on him. A bit too real for a morning show? Maybe that's the problem with television these days. Everyone's too afraid to ask the tough questions. Everyone wants to sit around and pat each other on the back and pretend everything's wonderful. There's a difference between tough questions and being needlessly cruel, Neil said, his patience clearly wearing thin. You're not interviewing me. You're attacking me. Attacking you? Lorraine laughed. Oh, please. If you can't handle a few honest observations, maybe you're in the wrong business. This is what happens when you put yourself out there, Neil. People are going to have opinions. Opinions are fine, Neil replied, but you're not sharing opinions. You're being deliberately provocative and disrespectful. I've done hundreds of interviews, Lorraine, and I've never been treated like this. Sarah Hughes leaned forward, attempting to salvage the situation. Why don't we talk about some of the guest stars this season? I heard there are some really exciting... Oh, for heaven's sake, Sarah, Lorraine interrupted, rolling her eyes. Can we stop trying to sugarcoat everything? Neil, let me ask you something. Do you ever look at other actors your age? The ones doing films, doing theater, doing something that actually matters, and think about what might have been? Neil stared at her for a long moment. Are you seriously suggesting that television doesn't matter? That the work I do doesn't matter? I'm suggesting that there are levels to this industry, Lorraine said with a shrug. And doing the same procedural drama year after year is hardly the pinnacle of achievement, is it? That's your opinion, Neil said, his voice tight. An opinion that, frankly, I find narrow-minded and elitist. Elitist, Lorraine repeated with a smirk. That's rich coming from someone who plays a detective in a show where the biggest crime is usually who stole the prize-winning marrow at the village fete. The audience gasped. This had gone far beyond playful banter or even tough questioning. This was personal, and everyone in the studio could feel it. Neil's face flushed. You know what, Lorraine? I came here today in good faith. I came here to talk about a show that brings joy to millions of people. A show that employs hundreds of talented individuals. A show that represents quality British television. But instead of having a respectful conversation, you've spent the last several minutes belittling me, my work, and everyone associated with it. Oh, here we go, Lorraine said, waving her hand dismissively. The wounded artist routine. Classic. It's not a routine, Neil said, his voice rising slightly. It's a reasonable response to unreasonable behavior. You've been condescending and rude from the moment I sat down. Marcus Fleming attempted to jump in. Maybe we should take a quick break and... We're not taking a break, Lorraine said sharply. Neil, if you're so offended by a little honest criticism, maybe you should reconsider doing publicity at all. Honest criticism? Neil shook his head in disbelief. You haven't offered any criticism. You've just been nasty. There's a difference. I've been asking you direct questions, Lorraine countered. If you don't like the questions, that's your problem, not mine. Your questions have been designed to demean and belittle, Neil said. That's not journalism. And that's just cruelty disguised as candor, Sarah Hughes tried once more. I think we're all getting a bit heated here. Why don't you let me handle my own interview, Sarah? Lorraine snapped. I don't need you playing peacemaker. Sarah sat back, looking genuinely hurt by the comment. Marcus put a hand on her arm in a gesture of support. Neil noticed the exchange and shook his head. You're not just rude to your guests, are you? You treat your own colleagues the same way. Excuse me? Lorraine's eyes narrowed. You heard me, Neil said. Sarah was trying to help, and you bit her head off. Marcus has tried to redirect this conversation multiple times, and you've shut him down each time. This isn't about me at all, is it? This is about you needing to be the center of attention, needing to create drama where there doesn't need to be any. How dare you, Lorraine said, her voice icy. You come onto my show, and you have the audacity to... Your show, Neil interrupted. Yes, it's your show, and you can run it however you want, but I don't have to sit here and be your punching bag for entertainment. The studio had gone completely silent. The camera operators, the producers, the audience members, everyone was watching this unfold with a mixture of shock and fascination. Lorraine leaned forward, her expression hard. If you don't like it, you know where the door is. Neil stared at her for a moment, then slowly stood up from his chair. You know what? I think I'll take you up on that. Sit down, Lorraine said, but there was a hint of uncertainty in her voice now. We're not finished. Yes, we are, Neil said calmly. He reached up and removed his microphone, carefully placing it on the chair he'd just vacated. I have too much respect for myself and for the people I work with to sit here and listen to this anymore. Marcus stood up as well. Neil, please, I'm sure we can... Marcus, you seem like a decent person, Neil said. I appreciate you trying. But this, he gestured to Lorraine, this is not an environment I want to be in. Lorraine's face had gone red. You can't just walk off my show. I can, and I am, Neil said. He turned to the audience. I apologize to all of you for this. You came here expecting a pleasant morning show, and instead, you got, well, whatever this was. Several audience members started to applaud, softly at first, then growing louder. Lorraine looked stunned. Stop that, she said to the audience. Stop clapping. He's being unprofessional. But the applause continued, and even grew. Some audience members stood up, showing their support for Neil. Sarah Hughes was also standing now, looking torn between professional loyalty and personal conviction. Lorraine, I think maybe... I don't care what you think, Sarah, Lorraine said, her composure cracking. Sit down. All of you. Sit down. But Neil was already walking toward the edge of the set. He turned back one last time. Lorraine, I hope you take a moment to reflect on how you've conducted yourself today. Not for my sake, but for the sake of everyone who has to work with you. Get out, Lorraine said, her voice shaking with anger. Just get out. I'm going, Neil said quietly. Believe me, I'm going. As he walked off the set, the studio descended into chaos. Audience members were talking among themselves, some still applauding. Sarah Hughes had her hand over her mouth, looking distressed. Marcus Fleming was trying to signal to the producers. And Lorraine Kelly sat in her chair, her face a mask of fury and embarrassment. Well, she said into her microphone, her voice tight, I suppose we'll go to commercial. But the damage was done. In the span of just a few minutes, what should have been a routine interview had turned into a disaster. The confrontation had escalated from passive-aggressive comments to outright hostility, and Neil Dudgeon, known throughout the industry as one of the most professional and gracious actors in British television, had been pushed to his limit. As the cameras cut away and the studio lights dimmed for the break, crew members rushed onto the set. Some went to check on Lorraine, while others followed Neil to make sure he was all right. Sarah and Marcus remained seated, both looking shell-shocked by what had just transpired. In the hallway outside the studio, Neil was surrounded by producers and assistants, all apologizing profusely. He waved them off politely but firmly. "It's not your fault," he told them. "You were all just doing your jobs. But I will not be treated that way. Not by anyone." One of the producers, a young woman named Emma, looked near tears. "Mr. Dudgeon, I'm so sorry. This has never happened before. I don't know what got into her today." Neil gave her a kind smile despite his frustration. "Sometimes people show you who they really are. I'm just glad I didn't waste more of my morning finding out." Back on the set, Lorraine was in a heated discussion with the show's director. Her voice carried across the studio. "He was being difficult from the start," she insisted. "I was just asking normal questions." The director, a veteran of television production named James, shook his head. "Lorraine, I've got the whole thing on tape. Those weren't normal questions. That was, I don't even know what that was." "Whose side are you on?" Lorraine demanded. "I'm not on anyone's side," James replied. "But I am telling you that what just happened is going to be a problem. A big problem." Marcus Fleming stood up and quietly excused himself from the set, following Sarah Hughes, who had already left. They found each other in the corridor, both looking shaken. "I've never seen her like that," Sarah said quietly. "I mean, she can be difficult sometimes, but that was something else entirely." Marcus nodded. "The way she spoke to Neil, the way she spoke to you, it was completely out of line." "What do we do?" Sarah asked. Marcus glanced back toward the studio. "I honestly don't know." Meanwhile, Neil had made his way to the exit. Several crew members stopped him to shake his hand or offer words of support. A makeup artist approached him timidly. "Mr. Dudgeon," she said, "I just want you to know that everyone back there thinks you handled that with incredible grace. She was completely out of order." Neil thanked her, but he could feel the adrenaline from the confrontation starting to fade, replaced by a deep sense of disappointment. He had been looking forward to this interview, to sharing stories about the show, to connecting with fans. Instead, he'd been subjected to a relentless attack disguised as an interview. As he pushed through the exit doors and stepped out into the cool morning air, he took a deep breath. Behind him, the studio was still in turmoil. Ahead of him, his day was free, no longer constrained by an appearance that had gone so terribly wrong. The whole confrontation had lasted less than 10 minutes from start to finish, but in that short time, something had fundamentally shifted. Neil Dudgeon had stood up for himself, for his work, and for basic human decency. He had refused to be bullied on national television, and he had walked away with his dignity intact. And Lorraine Kelly, for all her bluster and her insistence that she was just being honest, had revealed something about herself that no amount of spin could undo. She had shown the audience, her colleagues, and most importantly, herself, that there was a difference between being direct and being cruel, between asking tough questions and launching personal attacks. The interview that was supposed to promote a beloved television show had instead become a masterclass in how quickly things can go wrong when respect and professionalism are thrown out the window. And while Neil Dudgeon walked away from that studio having lost nothing but 20 minutes of his time, Lorraine Kelly was left to face the consequences of her own behavior, surrounded by a crew and audience who had witnessed every uncomfortable moment. In the end, the story was not about a television actor promoting a show. It was about a moment when someone said, "Enough is enough," when basic decency trumped manufactured drama, and when walking away became the most powerful statement of all. Neil Dudgeon had come to Lorraine Kelly's show as a guest, expecting courtesy and conversation. He left as someone who had drawn a line in the sand, who had refused to participate in his own humiliation, and who had reminded everyone watching that no amount of fame or platform gives anyone the right to treat another human being with contempt. The cameras had captured it all. The dismissive comments, the mocking tone, the deliberate attempts to provoke and belittle. They had also captured Neil's patience, his attempts to remain professional, and his eventual decision that enough was enough. In those few minutes of footage, viewers would see exactly what happened when a host forgot that interviews are meant to be conversations, not interrogations, and when a guest remembered that self-respect is more important than any publicity opportunity. As the commercial break ended and the show attempted to continue, the empty chair where Neil Dudgeon had been sitting served as a silent reminder of what had just occurred. Lorraine tried to move forward with the rest of the program, but the energy had shifted. The audience was restless, the panelists were uncomfortable, and everyone in that studio knew they had just witnessed something that would be talked about for a very long time. The confrontation was over, but its impact was just beginning to be felt. And somewhere outside that studio, Neil Dudgeon was walking away, his head held high, knowing he had made the right choice.